Imagine waking up to the nauseating stench of rancid fat mixed with the salt of the sea. The constant creaking of wood echoes through your bones as you feel the ship lurch violently beneath your feet. But this is only the beginning. What you don't know yet is that in the next few minutes your life will depend on decisions you never imagined having to make. You are aboard a whaling ship in 1851, and before the sun sets again, you'll discover why fewer than 60% of the men who joined these expeditions ever returned home alive. But would you be one of them? The first thing that assaults your senses isn't sight, it's the smell. A stench so intense and revolting, it makes you wonder if it wouldn't be better to leap into the icy ocean than breathe another second of that toxic air. It's the smell of processed death, the odor of whale blubber being rendered down in massive cauldrons that operate 24 hours a day. But why was this process so crucial that men risked their lives for it? The answer lies in what they called liquid gold, whale oil. In an age before electricity, this oil lit entire cities, lubricated the machines of the Industrial Revolution, and was even used as medicine. A single sperm whale could yield up to 3,000 gallons of oil, equivalent to 3 years' wages for the average worker. But getting this treasure required far more than courage. You feel the ship tilt sharply to the right, but it's no ordinary wave. It's the sign that a whale has been spotted. The lookout's cry rings out from the mast. Thashi blows, and then something you never expected happens. Within seconds, you're shoved into a small wooden boat just 6 meters long, alongside 5 men you barely know. But wait, would you really climb into this tiny nutshell in the middle of the ocean to hunt a creature over 60 feet long that can weigh 50 tons? Because that's exactly what's happening now. The boat cuts through the waves with startling speed, and you spot your prey in the distance. The sperm whale surfaces majestically, blowing a spout of mist visible for miles. But there's something the movies never showed: the sound. A deep, almost supernatural noise that seems to come from the bowels of the earth. It's the whale's song, and in that moment, you realize you're not just hunting an animal, you're confronting an ancient intelligence. The harpooner beside you, a man with arms like tree trunks, prepares his weapon. His hands are steady, but in his eyes you see something you never expected in a seasoned hunter: fear. Why? What does he know that you don't? The answer comes in a terrifying statistic. For every 10 boats that went out to hunt whales, only 7 returned intact. The rest were destroyed by furious tails, crushed by massive bodies, or simply vanished into the deep. And now you are part of that deadly lottery. The harpoon whistles through the air and strikes its target. But instead of dying instantly, the whale responds with a fury that defies description. The water erupts around the boat, turning the calm sea into a frenzy of foam and blood. And then, something that makes your heart stop. The whale dives, dragging the boat in a deadly race through the waves. They called it the Nantucket Sleigh Ride, and it was simultaneously the most terrifying and most addictive experience a man could have. The boat was pulled at speeds of up to 30 kilometers per hour, skipping over the waves like a stone across water. Some men became so addicted to this adrenaline rush that they spent years at sea, unable to return to the dull life on land. But could you keep your sanity during this wild ride? Records show that many men went mad at this exact moment, screaming and laughing hysterically as they were dragged towards certain death. When the whale finally stops, exhausted and bleeding, you think the worst is over. What a mistake. Now comes the most dangerous part: killing the wounded giant. The sperm whale isn't just massive, it's intelligent. Smart enough to turn and attack their hunters with a calculated precision that would make any military strategist proud. With a movement that seems impossible for something so massive, the whale lifts its enormous head, and you see for the first time its eyes. Eyes that seem to fully understand what's happening. Eyes that reveal not just pain, but an intelligence that makes you question who the real predator is in this situation. What happens next defies all logic. Instead of trying to escape, the whale swims directly toward the boat. Its lower jaw, filled, and with teeth the size of bananas, opens to reveal a dark cavern large enough to swallow the entire boat. But why would it do that? Why choose a suicidal charge rather than flee? The answer lies in the intelligence of sperm whales. Modern studies have shown that these animals possess some of the most complex brains on the planet, with specialized areas for emotions and social life. They are capable of grief, anger, and even seeking revenge. And now, staring into its eyes, you realize that this whale has chosen to die fighting. The impact is devastating. The whale's jaw crushes the side of the boat as if it were made of paper. Men scream wood splinters, and you find yourself flying through the air before plunging into the frigid waters of the North Atlantic. The temperature is so low that your muscles seize up instantly, and you have only minutes before hypothermia makes any movement impossible. But here's a question that might save your life. Do you know how to swim in heavy, soaked clothing? Because right now, your leather boots, thick trousers, and wool shirt have turned into anchors dragging you to the ocean floor. Experienced sailors knew that, in the event of a shipwreck, it was better to swim naked than try to stay afloat in wet clothes. You managed to kick off your boots and surface, gasping and desperate. Around you, the shattered remains of the boat float like evidence of your own mortality. But where are the other men? The answer is darker than you'd like to believe. Only 3 of the 6 managed to make it back to the surface. The others vanished, into the depths, their bodies never to be found. Clinging to a piece of wood, you scan the horizon for the mothership. But there's a problem. It's no longer where it should be. The wind and current carried it away during the chase, and now you're lost in the middle of the ocean, with 2 other men and not enough debris to build a proper raft. It's in this moment that you discover one of the most terrifying truths about whaling ships. They didn't stop operations to search for survivors. Time was money, and every hour lost meant less oil in the hold. Captains were known to abandon men at sea if the search threatened the profitability of the voyage. So what are your real chances of being rescued? The statistics are brutal. Men lost at sea during whaling operations had only a 30% chance of being found alive, and that's under ideal conditions. With the sun beginning to set, your odds are dropping with every passing minute. Thirst comes first. It's ironic to think that, surrounded by water, you could die of dehydration. But seawater doesn't quench thirst. It accelerates dehydration, leading to hallucinations and delirium within hours. Veteran sailors knew tricks to collect rainwater, or even distill small amounts of fresh water using improvised gear. But do you know those tricks? As you struggle to stay afloat, your mind begins to play tricks on you. You swear you see ships on the horizon that vanish when you try to focus. You hear the voices of loved ones calling your name. That's dehydration, starting to affect your brain. Soon you might start compulsively drinking seawater, speeding up your own death. But something even more sinister is circling you now. Sharks. The smell of the wounded whale's blood has spread for miles, and predators are on their way. In the 19th century, the seas were far richer in marine life, including shark species that are now rare. Tiger sharks, bull sharks, and the dreaded great whites were a constant presence around whaling ships. You feel something brush against your leg. It could be seaweed, it could be debris, but it could also be the fin of a predator testing if you're viable prey. What would you do in that situation? Stay still and try to appear dead, or thrash around to scare the creature away? The wrong choice could mean instant death. One of the men beside you, let's call him Jake, begins showing signs of panic. He swims frantically toward a shadow on the horizon that exists only in his hallucinating mind. You shout for him to stop, but it's too late. Within minutes, Jake vanishes from sight, his strength drained, chasing an imagined miracle. Now there are only 2 of you, and night is falling. Ocean temperatures in the North Atlantic can drop to 2 degrees Celsius at night. Without proper clothing and already weakened bodies, you have very little time before hypothermia becomes irreversible. The signs start subtly: uncontrollable shivering, slurred speech, mental confusion. But the most frightening part is that, in the final stages of hypothermia, people often feel an intense warmth and begin removing their clothes, accelerating the loss of body heat. Your remaining companion, an older man named Samuel, seems to recognize these signs. He comes close to you in the water and whispers something that chills your blood. "Son, one of us ain't gonna see the sunrise. Question is, Who? What does he mean by that? The answer lies in one of the darkest practices of castaways, cannibalism. When men were lost at sea for days without food or fresh water, they were forced to make decisions that defied all civilized morality. Historical records from whaling ships are full of stories of survivors who lived only by consuming the flesh of their dead companions. But Samuel is suggesting something even darker, that one of you should die so the other can live. This wasn't uncommon among desperate castaways. Some even developed lottery systems to decide who would be sacrificed. Would you take part in such a draw? Would you kill a man to save your own life? Thankfully, that macabre decision is interrupted by what you first believed to be a hallucination. A light on the horizon. But it's not a hallucination, it's a ship and it's getting closer. Your odds of survival just increased dramatically, but this is still no guarantee of salvation. The ship approaching may not be friendly. The oceans of the 19th century were teeming with pirates, especially in international waters. Whaling ships heavy with valuable oil and short on crew due to hunting operations were perfect targets. Being rescued by pirates meant at best being forced to join their criminal crew. At worst, it meant immediate death, but do you have a choice? With Samuel now showing clear signs of advanced hypothermia, his speech is slurred and he seems confused, both of you will be dead before dawn unless you board whatever ship has found you. The vessel approaches, and you can see it's a merchant ship. There's no pirate flag, which is a good sign. Ropes are tossed into the water and strong hands pull you aboard. You're safe now, right? Wrong. Boarding an unknown ship in the 19th century meant automatically becoming part of the crew, whether you wanted to or not. It was a practice called impressment, and it was perfectly legal. Captains needed manpower, and men found at sea were considered property of the ship that rescued them. You've just traded certain death at sea for years of forced labor in conditions. That might be even worse than those on the original whaling ship. The captain of the merchant vessel, a small man with eyes that appraise your usefulness like livestock, tells you that you'll work without pay for the next 2 years to repay your rescue. Samuel, still suffering from hypothermia, is taken below deck to recover. You never see him again. In the days that follow, you discover that this merchant ship carries cargo that makes your situation even more dangerous: gunpowder and rum, a lethal combination that turns even the smallest accidental spark into a devastating explosion. Sailors work 16-hour shifts, moving heavy barrels in poorly ventilated holds, knowing that a single wrong move could blow up the entire ship. But here's the question that could save your life once again. Do you know how to spot the signs that gunpowder is deteriorating? Wet gunpowder not only becomes useless, it becomes unstable, capable of exploding spontaneously. The sickly sweet smell, the change in color, the sticky texture, these are signs every seasoned sailor knew. Ignoring them meant certain death. During a particularly violent storm, you discover another deadly secret of old ships. They leaked constantly. Salt water seeped through the wooden planks of the hull, mixing with the cargo in the hold. And when salt water comes into contact with deteriorated gunpowder, well, you can imagine the result. The explosion happens in the middle of the night without warning. You wake to the deafening sound of splintering wood and screaming men. The ship is on fire, and you have maybe 2 minutes before the flames reach the remaining gunpowder below deck. But where are the lifeboats? Here's a fact that may shock you. Many 19th century ships didn't carry enough lifeboats for the entire crew. It was a matter of weight and space. Each boat meant less cargo, less profit. Captains gambled that they'd never need them. A gamble that, as you're finding out, didn't always pay off. Once again, you find yourself fighting for your life in freezing water, but this time there isn't enough debris to cling to. The ship is sinking fast, creating a vortex that could pull you under with the wreckage. Swimming away from the sinking ship is crucial, but that also means moving away from any possible rescue. It's in this moment of utter desperation that you realize something extraordinary. You're no longer thinking like the person you were 24 hours ago. Your instincts have changed, your priorities completely reorganized. You've become a pure survivor, someone capable of making choices your civilized self would have never considered. When another survivor approaches in the water, clearly panicked and trying to cling to you in a way that would drag you both down, you don't hesitate to push them away. Your rational mind knows this might mean their death, but your survival instinct is stronger. You've become exactly the kind of person you would judge under normal circumstances. But maybe that transformation is necessary, because as you swim alone in total darkness, no stars visible due to the storm clouds, no points of reference, you need every ounce of composure to make the most important decision of your life: which direction to swim. Choosing the wrong direction means swimming out to sea until exhaustion. Choosing correctly could mean finding land, or at least calmer waters where your chances of rescue improve. But how do you make that choice without a compass, without stars, without any knowledge of navigation? The answer lies in subtle signs that experienced sailors learned over decades at sea. The direction of the waves, the scent of the air, even the behavior of fish can indicate proximity to land. But do you know those signs? Because your life now depends on knowledge, you never had reason to learn. You choose a direction based purely on intuition and begin to swim. Your strength is fading fast, but something keeps you going. The realization that, in just 24 hours, you've lived more intensely than in years of ordinary life. Every decision carried life or death consequences. Every moment demanded the full extent of your mental and physical abilities. And then you see it, a faint but steady light in the distance. It's not a star, and it's not a hallucination. It's a lighthouse, land salvation. With the last reserves of energy you didn't know you had, you swim toward the light. Your strokes are weak, clumsy, but determined. With every meter, the light grows stronger, more real. And when your hands finally touch the rough rocks of the shoreline, you realize you've done something statistically near impossible. You survived. But as you drag yourself across the rocky shore, too exhausted to stand, one final question echoes in your mind. Did you truly survive 24 hours on a whaling ship? Or was it the whaling ship that transformed you into someone capable of surviving anything? The answer may be more complex than you imagine. Because as you lie on the cold sand, staring at the stars that have finally broken through the clouds, you know you'll never again be the same person who boarded that ship in the morning. You survived not only extreme physical conditions, but also a psychological transformation few humans ever experience. And perhaps that is the true lesson of the whaling ships. They weren't just vessels for the hunt. They were machines of human transformation, capable of revealing or creating aspects of human nature that lie dormant in civilization. You discovered you're capable of killing to survive, of abandoning others to save yourself, of enduring pain and fear you once believed impossible. But you also uncovered an inner strength you never knew you had, a determination that carried you through situations where most people would simply give up. You faced death multiple times and chose again and again to keep fighting. So, returning to the original question, could you survive 24 hours on a whaling ship? The answer isn't yes or no. The answer is that you would either become someone who could survive or die trying. And perhaps that's the only real difference between those who came back from those expeditions and those who didn't. It wasn't about physical strength or prior experience, but the ability to transform swiftly and completely. The men who boarded whaling ships weren't necessarily braver or stronger than you, but they were forced by extreme circumstances to become more intense versions of themselves, versions capable of facing dangers the civilized mind deems impossible. And now, looking back on these 24 hours that feel like they've lasted a lifetime, you understand why those men, when they finally returned home, often seemed like strangers to their own families. They had witnessed aspects of human existence, both the most noble and the darkest, that most people never even imagine. You survived, but the person who began this journey no longer exists. And maybe that's the greatest achievement of all, discovering that it's possible to completely transform when life demands it, that the limits we believed we had are, in fact, far more flexible than we imagined. After all, you wouldn't really survive 24 hours on a whaling ship. At least, not as the person you were before you boarded.